All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. Hope you're ready for this one.
Absolutely. Excited to dig into this.
Because we're dealing with some, well, pretty interesting source material today.
Interesting is one word for it.
That's fair. We're tackling an audio file, called it whiteflower.mp3, and
Catchy, right?
very catchy, but let's not get distracted by the title.
Right.
This isn't some baking tutorial, even though you might think so at first.
Not even close.
It's using food, of all things, to talk about social dynamics.
Smart, actually, when you think about it. Food's something everybody gets.
Exactly. And this audio, it's using these familiar food metaphors, these culinary images, to really make you think about, well, how society works, how power plays out.
Like, how does what we consume, literally and figuratively, shape our world?
That's a great way to put it. So, to start unpacking this whole thing, right away, you're hit with this white flour imagery. Over and over. White flour, doughboys, rising. It's everywhere. What's the deal with that?
It's not about baking, that's for sure. It's setting up a metaphor. Think of it like white flour stands in for systems we're all part of, especially systems with power and privilege baked in.
Systems that benefit some more than others.
Exactly. Like, there's this line, white flour outcomes ain't nothing nice, and it makes you stop and think, right, what's that about?
Right. It hints at the inequalities baked into those systems.
It suggests that some people benefit from how things are, while others, they're kind of stuck with the crumbs. And it makes you think of real-world examples, too.
Like historically how certain foods get promoted.
Exactly. Whether it's for profit or control, suddenly everyone's told this food, whatever it is the best thing since sliced bread. But is it really? Or is it just good for a certain group?
And that takes us to another interesting line, rolling out the history, pressing on the myth. Almost like this audio is saying, let's dig into the past, see how we got here.
Food and history, always linked. Who controls the farms, the factories, the grocery stores? That tells you a lot about who has power.
It's like this audio is saying, don't just accept the easy narratives, question them.
Yeah, like who benefits from this history we're being told? Whose story are we really hearing?
And that brings to mind that line about flour propaganda. Like, we're constantly bombarded with messages about what's good for us, what we should eat, what we should think.
It's about controlling the narrative. Like how back in the day they'd say, eat your spinach, it'll make you strong. And yes, spinach is good for you, but they weren't telling you to eat it because it was healthy. They were telling you to eat it because it was cheap and plentiful. It's all connected to larger systems of power and control.
Totally. And then, just when you think you've got a handle on the white flour thing, the audio makes this hard shift.
Wow.
Suddenly, it's about inclusivity and salad. And then there's talk about anti-white flour movements. It gets kind of radical.
It's like, okay, we've laid out the problem, now what? And this part of the audio seems to be exploring solutions, or at least alternatives. If white flour represents those old systems of power and inequality, then what's the opposite?
Right. What's the recipe for a fairer society?
Maybe it starts with inclusivity and salad. Maybe it's about bringing more voices to the table, literally and metaphorically, making space for different ingredients, different perspectives.
Especially with lines like ganks of equality, pies made of unity. That sounds pretty hopeful, right?
It does. It suggests that a different future is possible, one where everyone has a slice of the pie, so to speak.
So cakes, pies, mixing bowls, these aren't just random food images.
No, they're symbolic. They represent collaboration, the blending of differences, creating something new and delicious together.
But then, just when you're feeling all warm and fuzzy about unity,
I mean, that's real.
the audio brings up truth prevailing and heat waves. Like, hold on, is change going to be easy?
Yeah, doubtful. It reminds me of that line, burning through the oven mitts, confronting deeply ingrained inequalities, challenging the status quo. That's going to create some friction.
Like, you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs.
Exactly. Real change, lasting change. It might require some uncomfortable truths, pushing past our comfort zones, even ruffling some feathers.
Which makes those final lines even more interesting to unpack. No room for impurity. Wait, I thought we were all about inclusivity. Now it sounds kind of exclusive.
And that's the tension this audio leaves us with. It raises those tough questions. What does true inclusivity actually look like? Are there limits to it? And who gets to decide where those lines are drawn?
So it's not giving us easy answers. It's more like
It's giving you the ingredients and letting you figure out the recipe.
this audio, this whiteflower.mp3, it's not just about food. It's about power, about who gets a seat at the table, and about the recipe for a fairer future.
And how sometimes, even with the best intentions, figuring out that recipe can be messy and complex.
It sure is. It
Yeah.
makes you think, are the metaphors landing? Are they effective? Or are they just, well, a bit half-baked?
Maybe that's part of the point, to make us question, to make us uncomfortable. Because if we're not a little uncomfortable, are we really challenging the status quo?
Lots to chew on, that's for sure. Big thanks for diving into this with me.
Anytime.
Until next time, keep those questions simmering, and we'll catch you all in the next deep dive.
Yeah. Kneading dough, baking up, rise of the yeast. Got the kitchen cooking, bread game on feast. Mix and measure grams to ounces, chemistry precise. White flour outcomes, ain't nothing nice. White flour power, sifting out the hate. Doughboys in the kitchen, start to calibrate. Rise it in the oven, but the outcome's stale. Burning through the oven, bitch, truth gon' prevail. Preheat the oven, setting up the heat waves. Flour propaganda got them acting like slaves. Rolling out the history, pressing on the myth. White flour ideologies can take a sniff. White flour power, sifting out the hate. Doughboys in the kitchen, start to calibrate. Rise it in the oven, but the outcome's stale. Burning through the oven, bitch, truth gon' prevail. Preheat the oven, setting up the heat waves. Flour propaganda got them acting like slaves. Rolling out the history, pressing on the myth. White flour ideologies can take a sniff. White flour power, sifting out the hate. Doughboys in the kitchen, start to calibrate. Rise it in the oven, but the outcome's stale. Burning through the oven, bitch, truth gon' prevail. Bakers preaching pure, but beneath it mold. Gluten in their rhetoric, stale and old. Inclusions baked in, diversity enriches. Whole grain mindsets, ditching old glitches. Whipping up a batter, inclusivity salad. Anti-white flour movements, balance in the palate. Cakes of equality, pies made a unit. Mix it in a bowl, no room for impurity. Whipping up a batter, inclusivity salad. Anti-white flour movements, balance in the palate. Cakes of equality, pies made a unity. Mix it in a bowl, no room for impurity.